He looked like a Gibb, acted like a Gibb, and sang like a Gibb. So, he was a Gibb. Andy was the younger brother of Barry, Robin, and Maurice Gibb, the trio that formed the Bee Gees. It's true that the young singer performed several times with his brothers, but he was not officially a Bee Gees. Andy was born in England 1958, the youngest of 5 children. When he was just 6 months old, his family moved to Australia. When he was a preteen, the Bee Gees were a huge success in England, and Andy moved with his parents to Ibiza, in Spain. He dropped out of school at the age of 13 to pursue his own musical career. Obviously, in his veins ran the same blood as his brothers, so it was expected that one day this would happen. In an interview with People magazine, Andy said, "Everyone said I would regret dropping out of school at such a young age, but there was nothing else I'd rather have done." He expected to become the 4th member of the Bee Gees at some point. But with his good looks and captivating voice, his brother Barry encouraged him to pursue his own interests in music and gave him his first guitar. After forming some bands and a certain recognition with the single Words and Music reaching the top 5 of the Australian charts, the young singer caught the attention of the manager of the Bee Gees, Robert Stigwood, who offered him a solo contract. In 1976, Andy moved to Miami, and, with the help of his brother Barry, released his first album, Flowing Rivers, the following year. A real success that made him reach 2 #1 hits. The first one was I Just Want to Be Your Everything, written by Barry Gibb, and became the biggest sales record in 1977. The second hit was Love is Thicker Than Water, written in collaboration with his brother. Then came the Grammy nominations for Best Performance and Best New Artist.
You and me been finding each other for so long.
In 1978, he released his second album, Shadow Dancing. The title track, co-written by all 4 Gibb brothers, was his biggest hit, becoming the Billboard #1 song of the year, after 7 weeks at the top of the charts. Andy was the first male solo artist to have 3 consecutive #1 songs. The album produced 2 other hits that reached the top 10 in 1978, On Everlasting Love and Don't Throw It All Away.
I need that sweet sensation of living in your love. So
It was rare to see Andy Gibb performing with his brothers Barry, Robin, and Maurice, but that's exactly what happened on a special night in July 1979. The Bee Gees were in the midst of the Spirits Being Flown tour when they welcomed their younger brother on stage to perform one of his biggest hits, You Should Be Dancing. The Bee Gees' Spirits Being Flown tour, a unique 90-minute NBC broadcast celebrating the superstars of the 70s, shows the moment that the 3 Bee Gees became 4 and sang a stunning live version of their hit song. At the time Andy was only 21 years old, it felt like a new star was born, but what happened next was anything but good. As much as success was a good thing, Andy was uncomfortable and unhappy. He had low self-esteem, felt inferior and incapable. At the end of the 70s, the young singer disputed the first place on the chart with his brothers, the Bee Gees. He began to demonstrate that he was not handling well so much public exposure. There may have been several reasons, but mostly his insecurity. The fact that his biggest hits were authored or co-authored by his brother Barry may also have reinforced these feelings. The long shadow of the Bee Gees was never far from Andy, and he recognized that once. I honestly don't think I would be here right now if it weren't for them, if they hadn't come along first. Well, who knows how that would have worked, but my brother Barry gave me my first chance. He produced my first records, he wrote most of my hits, so who's to say, if it wasn't for him first. In an interview with People magazine, Jeff Witches, Andy's agent between 1983 and 1985, reviewed how the singer saw himself in the midst of all of this. Sometimes I'd say, Andy, look in the mirror. You've got everything. Good looks, talent, women love you. But when he looked at himself in the mirror, you always had the feeling that he didn't see anything. Thus, the singer sank into drugs, especially cocaine. This was a problem that affected him in every way. The consequences of this were reflected on his third album, After Dark, released in 1980. Only 2 tracks had his signature. If it wasn't for Barry's decisive performance aiming to help his brother to achieve his third album, it wouldn't have been recorded, nor released. Andy suffered from a writer's block, and wasn't able to perform. In this scenario, Robert Stigwood saw no alternative but to terminate Andy's contract with his label, RSO Records. But before that, still in 1980, the album Greatest Hits compilation featuring 3 unreleased recordings, Time is Time, Me, and Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, the latter a duet with singer P.P. Arnold. The album marked the end of an era and all of its success.
living and breathing, some misbelieving, but I can't without you.
drug addiction affected not only his professional life, but also his personal one. At the age of 18, Andy married the receptionist Kim Reader, also 18, in Australia just a few months before moving to America. But the marriage was short-lived because Andy fell in love with drugs. In an interview with People magazine in 1988, the ex-wife said, "Cocaine became his first love. He became depressed and paranoid. He was not the man I married." She left him when she found out she was pregnant and returned to Australia. A few years later, Andy began a relationship with the actress Victoria Principal, famous for American TV show Dallas. Drugs and alcohol have become a problem in the relationship, and she gave him an ultimatum. "I asked him to make a choice, me or drugs. I know with all his heart he wanted to choose me, but he chose drugs," said Victoria to Behind the Music show at Channel VH1. In another interview, she recalled how addictions were playing a major role in Andy's life. "Well, it was very clear to me that his behavior was becoming erratic, and he was very, very thin. Andy was a very kind person, and some of his behavior felt like the antithesis of who I knew he was, and I finally realized it had to be drugs." With his musical career on the drying up, Andy tried to take on other projects, but his ability to work was severely affected by his personal issues. On TV, he co-hosted the music show Solid Gold with Marin McCoo, but lost his job several times not showing up for work. And he also appeared as a guest in the Punky Brewster TV show, and even tried theater plays, but failed, missing many performances. The singer opened up about this once, and even blamed his ex, Victoria Principal, for his failures. "I just fell apart and didn't care about a thing. I started using cocaine all the time. I stayed up for 2 weeks, locked in my bedroom. The producers kept calling, sending me cars, but I refused to go. I really think the main reason I fell from stardom was my affair with Victoria." Andy finally sought treatment for his drug problems at the Betty Ford Clinic in 1985, and for the last 2 years of his life, his brother supported him emotionally and financially. In 1987, the singer declared bankruptcy, reporting an annual income of less than $8,000. He was deep in debt, but somehow he overcame his addictions, and the young man returned to recording, in partnership with his brothers, aiming for his triumphant return to the musical scenario. In 1988, Andy was planning a recording contract with Island Records. He intended to release 2 singles and then his first album after years. Unfortunately, this didn't happen. He was able to miss the days that he was supposed to sign the contract with the record company. Although he was back and even the Bee Gees announcing that he would officially join the group as the 4th Bee Gees in 1988, he was suffering. Robin Gibb once spoke about his brother's state of mind that year. "He just went downhill so fast. He was in a state of depression." Shortly after his 30th birthday, he was admitted to John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, England, complaining of chest pains. On March 10, 1988, his doctor told him that more tests needed to be done to find the cause of his pain. Later that day, he died of myocarditis, an inflammation of the heart muscle caused by a recent viral infection. It was a condition no doubt aggravated by years of drugs and alcohol abuse, by a man who had apparently lost his passion for life. Andy Gibb was still very young and had his whole life ahead of him. He celebrated his last birthday on March 5th, 1988, only in the company of his mother in Robin's house in Thame, a town in England. Barbara knew her youngest son was deeply depressed, and the whole family knew he was drinking too much, so she flew from Miami to be with him. With a serious problem writing songs, a desire to get rid of the feeling of just having been a teen idol, and possibly doubts as whether he still wanted a musical career, Andy was depressed. Everyone who knew him said he was a kind soul and had a genuine love for people. Not surprisingly, his death broke many hearts, especially his father Hugh, who died in 1992, coincidentally just a day after Andy's birthday. The brothers often said that the father was never the same after his son's death, and even mentioned a sense of relief that they were both reunited again. The singer Marilyn McCoo, who presented with Andy the program Solid Gold, also talked about Andy, saying that he had difficulty dealing with his brother's fame and desperately wanted to be successful like them. Barry Gibb was Andy's closest brother. He revealed he regrets introducing his brother to showbiz. For the official 2000 Bee Gees biography, Barry revealed that Andy did not believe in himself, but he had a lot of talent. Andy Gibb had a daughter with his ex-wife Kim Reader, named Peta, who was born in January 25th, 1978. She was just 10 years old when her father died, and in 2017 she was invited to join the Gibb Collective project, which featured Peta, Barry's sons Stephen and Travis, Robin's sons Spencer and Robin John, and Marie's children, Samantha and Adam, who covered their father's classic songs. Peta Gibb covers his shadow dancing deep cut, Fool for Love. Peta has already revealed that she would have loved to have lived with her father. At didn't have the chance to get to know my father as well as I should have. As I grew, I learned that he was famous, and that he had famous siblings. But for me, he was just a guy on the end of the telephone line. I remember Mom calling me into a room once, pointing at solid gold on TV, and saying, "That's your dad." I always wished we had more of a chance to get to know each other. I wanted to be close to him, like any daughter wants with her father, but outside forces conspired against us. So far, it has been clear that Andy Gibb was very sensitive and delicate, and although he grew up, he did not mature. He suffered from addictions, depression, inferiority complex, and unsuccessful relationships. And he was a great example of a pop star who couldn't handle fame and left us too soon.